Ladies and gentlemen, we've got him. Paul George is officially a member of your Philadelphia 76ers after trying to hang on and wait all night to get that official update at 3:30 a.m. on the Eastern Coast. We have Paul George's announcement from Adrian Wojnarowski saying that breaking free agent forward Paul George has agreed on a 4-year, $212 million maximum contract with the Philadelphia 76ers, sources tell ESPN. George committed in a meeting with the Sixers officials and returned to the East to join Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey in pursuit of an NBA title. So we did know that all these signs were pointing this direction. I did drop a video last night kind of speaking about the Clippers posting that breakup message, which I do think was worth noting and basically pointed all signs to the Sixers, but ultimately that they did have to finalize things. And the Sixers brought the big dogs. That looking at that Sixers meeting out there in LA, says George and his agent Aaron Mintz of CAA met with Sixers officials, including owner Josh Harris, Daryl Morey, Elton Brand, and legend Julius Erving in LA. PGA agreed on a deal that includes a player option, sources said. And as far as Paul George, he came prepared as well, because take a look at what he was rocking to that meeting right there in Allen Iverson 2001 MVP shirt. I absolutely love it. Taking a page out of the Bryce Harper School of Pandering right here, where he's rocking the Philly Fanatic constantly. It's a nice way to kind of set yourself up on the right foot here. Now, a lot I want to get into with Paul George specifically. For starters here, this is a home run that I don't want it to be looked at as any other thing. And you can have your critiques about Paul George. He's not perfect. I understand that. He's 34 years old. He has an injury history. But the bottom line, he's Paul George. He is a caliber of player that simply don't move markets or move teams in free agency that often. And if you want to reflect on the Sixers specific history, I think you can make a real case that this is the most notable free agent addition in the franchise's history. If you just want to think in the modern history, let's talk about Elton Brand himself as a player and Al Horford are probably the two most notable free agents. And specifically in this ecosystem of the NBA, where teams work so hard not to let the high-value guys leave for free, the Sixers found a way to make it happen. And Daryl Morey does deserve his flowers for that. You cannot love the way that Daryl Morey plays the game, but you also can deny that he's very good at the way that he does it. And this cap space plan, which I'd kind of critiqued and was skeptical about for these same reasons that we don't see these star players leave all that often, well, the Sixers put themselves in the right spot and ultimately capitalized here. Now, there's a large part of this that I want to bring up as far as the likelihood for the Sixers' chances this year. That we do know the goal is obviously to win a title. And by the way, quick shout out to Tyrese Maxey, who I will be dropping a separate video on, who got his bag as well, signing a 5-year, $204 million maximum extension. I do want to talk about Maxey in a little more detail in that next video. But the biggest thing that I want to acknowledge here is a little just pat on the back and thank you for Tyrese Maxey, because this is not possible if it was not for the good faith that Maxey showed. Flashback to last offseason when Maxey is extension eligible, that he sits there and says, you know what, I don't need the money now, that we're going to do this loophole, create this cap space by delaying the extension, and because he was the 21st overall pick, that his cap hit in the eyes of the NBA salary cap was $13 million. They were able to keep that $13 million on the books, sign Paul George first, and then give Tyrese Maxey the max contract that he has certainly earned, and that is why we're now looking at these 3 stars. And the reason that those 3 stars are so important is for this right here. And Jake Fisher wrote this about a month ago, which really did get me thinking a little bit, and he writes that since 2012-13, the chance a team reaches the conference finals nearly doubles from 18.5% to 30.8% when a roster boasts 3 top players compared to 2 top players, according to Team Building reviewed by Yahoo Sports, with top players being those who made an All-Star or All-NBA team within 2 years of the current season and played 29-plus minutes per game. The championship odds for a team with 2 top players stand at just 0.9% compared to 14% with teams featuring 3. Every title winner since 2013 has rostered at least a trio of alphas aside from 2 teams. Last June's Nuggets, which was Nikola Jokic, was Denver's sole All-Star, and 2020 Lakers. And by the way, that little Nuggets asterisk I'll throw there, that it is a crime Jamal Murray has not made an All-Star game yet. A lot of this has been due to injuries and games missed and that type of thing. The talent is there, so I do think he fits this conversation, even if he didn't quite meet the requirements here. But it continues on to say, and the 2020 Lakers, with only James and Anthony Davis meeting such criteria. It's why Brooklyn tripled down with acquiring James Harden next to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. It's why Minnesota and Boston now loom the favorites to clash in this year's finals. Obviously, Dallas did come out with that, but they have Kyrie and Luka, so kind of fit the description as well. It's this specific principle underlying Suns governor Matt Ishbia's bold claim that 26 other teams would want Phoenix roster. The Suns have 2 All-Stars in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and Suns officials are optimistic Bradley Beal can return to all-star form following his first healthy season in some time. So the reason I bring all this up is that these Sixers clearly leaned into this three-star plan, and to call a spade and acknowledge it, that is how Daryl Morey is wired. That this is the third time that he's stolen a star from Los Angeles. We're talking about Chris Paul, we're talking about Dwight Howard, and now we're talking about Paul George here, with these previous examples dating back to his time with the Rockets there, and obviously at a higher peak of each of those players. And by the way, quick shout out to Chris Paul, who's going to be playing in San Antonio next year next to Victor Wembanyama, which is going to be awesome to watch. But I am only worried about the Sixers and the Eastern Conference here. And I do feel great about the way that they have positioned themselves. And the reason that I think that specific qualification, that third star, is so notable, because that leap as a basketball player is the most difficult one to make. The NBA is filled with tremendous basketball players. But even when having these conversations about like a Paul George, you know who he is, that he has taken that leap to that true 9-time All-Star, guy who can fill it up, is one of the more productive players, a guy who stylistically just has every bit of the eye test that you could possibly look for, that he has reached that pinnacle in a way. And even when sorting through these other options that the Sixers had, you know, the role player theory where you overpay the Kentavious Caldwell-Popes, bring in maybe a Klay Thompson, guys like that, which none of those are happening. KCP ended up down in Orlando, looking like it's between Los Angeles or Dallas for Klay Thompson there, or even the conversations about the Brandon Ingrams of the world, or the Zach LaVines, or guys like that, even Mikal Bridges. The reality is, like, as much as you can make the case a player like Brandon Ingram is younger, is more athletic, does have room to grow, in all likelihood, there is no guarantee that he gets better. And to flash back to the Sixers right here, that's a little bit of the gamble that they took with Tobias Harris when they made that investment to him. The $180 million contract, the 5-year deal that he got back in 2018-19. And by the way, Tobias getting a bag again, playing out there in Detroit, where he will perfectly fulfill his basketball destiny of producing empty calorie statistics on a below 500 NBA team. That is just the reality of what his purpose is as a basketball player. But for Tobias specifically, when the Sixers made that initial investment, the hope is that he would grow. That did not happen. For Paul George, even with the argument that he's on his decline, you still know what he is. And just as far as what he produced this year, we're talking about 22.6 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals per game, shot 47.1% from the field, 41.3% from three, 45.7% on corner threes, and 47.6% of his shots from the corner. And to make like the direct Brandon Ingram comparison right now, like you can see these are still obviously very good stats, and you can make the case that like in certain contexts of teams could fit better, but the 35% from three is really notable. 35% from the corner, not great there. He's also got only 23.8% of his shots are three, and to compare that with Paul George, 47.6%, and just the efficiency better. Like the worst case scenario for Paul George, let's say that the age really hits him, that the injury concerns, his body begins to deteriorate at a quicker rate than the Sixers are ready. The worst case scenario is this dude just turns into a really expensive spot-up shooter, which is incredibly important on the Sixers team and a team designed around Joel Embiid. And to dive into what Paul George I mean by that specifically, like just looking at these three-point numbers, the combination of volume and efficiency truly is pretty absurd. That through his career, a 38.5% three-point shooter on 6.8 per game. Just last year, 41.3% from beyond the arc on 7.9 three-point attempts per game. If that's a washed Paul George, then sign me up, because that is going to come into play, and that is the reason, one of the driving reasons why Paul George has been the answer for the Sixers team. And the other part of that is the Sixers still kept plenty of flexibility, that they did not have to give up any draft picks. They just straight up signed this guy without having to give up anything additionally. And that leaves room to be a little flexible right now, where you can flip a first-round pick for Dorian Finney-Smith or start trading a couple more draft picks to bring in these role players. There are already some other additions. Guys like Eric Gordon, who joined this team, who's another high-volume three-point shooter, 64.2% of all of his shots coming from beyond the arc there, still an 11-point-per-game guy. Also a guy like Andre Drummond that was added, 9 rebounds per game, who will be a major weapon in solving the Sixers' rebounding issues there. Kelly Oubre coming back. I'll be talking about that in another video as well. But the point being here that Paul George you accomplished as the main piece, and you now have room and available options to build out a true roster from here. So to Daryl Morey, you can run your victory lap right now. The plan that you laid out worked. One of the more difficult situations to navigate when you think about everything that factored in that led up to this specific point, from the Ben Simmons situation to the James Harden situation, the holdout that was led by there. You even can, if you want to look at it from James Harden's perspective or tie it into the James Harden situation here, Daryl Morey basically just decided that James Harden wasn't quite worth that deal, and his teammate out there in LA, Paul George, is. That's kind of very much a credit for him standing on his beliefs, figuring out what is best for the Sixers team, and finding a way to make it happen. So to Daryl Morey, shout out for your plan coming together there. I was skeptical at points and times, but it is a time to celebrate that Paul George is a member of the Philadelphia 76ers, and I truly believe this organization has the best big three in the entire NBA. Even if you want to compare them, I think the team that is in the vicinity of it is the Phoenix Suns, but I just think this Sixers team fits together so much better, that you have the clear-cut roles of Tyrese Maxey at the guard position. You have Paul George at the wing, and you have Joel Embiid at the big man spot there. That is perfect. When you think about a team like the Suns, there's a lot of repetition and overlap in these styles, positions, and just the overall way that those guys play. That is not the case here in Philadelphia. And you can throw some other names to me. I know the Boston Celtics are obviously a hurdle that the Sixers are going to have to clear. But I also like having Paul George is at least a guy that is in the vicinity of looking these Jason Tatums and Jaylen Brown in the eyes. Like, would we have been feeling great if Brandon Ingram is that guy that's going to have to go blow for blow with these guys? And more so, I mean, on the defensive side of the floor. And while Paul George is not the defender he once was, there was a point where he was one of the premier defenders across the entire NBA. He's still a guy who's 6'8", long, still has some athleticism in him, far more than a guy like Tobias Harris. And that is my last final point here is we've lived through the Tobias Harris experience for far too long. That this will be the first time since 2019 in which Joel Embiid will step on a basketball floor without Tobias Harris on the roster. And the first time in the entirety of Joel Embiid's career which he will be starting on opening day on a team without Jahlil Okafor or Tobias Harris. That is embarrassing stuff from a franchise standpoint, but also a reason for optimism from here. And for the Tobias Harris conversation, I know I talked about how they hoped he would grow with time, and ultimately it ended up to be the opposite there. I think people are still underselling how much that played a role in being just not being able to make it past the second round to clear that hurdle there, and just taking out Tobias Harris and putting Paul George on the Sixers team. We're looking at it in a much different light there. So shout out to Daryl Morey for making things happen. Welcome to Philadelphia, Paul George. I cannot wait to dive deeper into all these little points that I hit on with the other pieces that are added, and there is still work to do. There is still plenty of news set to be break for the offseason, so appreciate you guys for tuning into this video here. Make sure you are smashing that subscribe button to stay up to date on everything that is about to go down from here. Like this video to let me know you're listening, and any comments you have below. Also, we'll be doing a live stream tonight, breaking everything down as we have a clear picture being painted, and a couple more videos popping out throughout the day about the other moves going down. So appreciate each and every one of you guys once again, and talk with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.